Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Watson. I'm the director of Artemisia Academy, and I'm really excited to share this talk with the International Herbal Symposium. And I'm very honored that they chose me to come on and chat with you guys today about this really important issue. So we're going to be talking today about the healer's journey and doing the deep work to go from burnout to balance. And if you're anything like me, maybe you can relate with a few things. So, have you ever felt totally exhausted no matter how much you rest? I know, especially a few years in my practice, I was so excited to be doing herbalism and to be finally seeing clients and such, but yet I was just kind of floored from energy wipeout all the time. Have you ever felt drained by caring for others with nothing left for yourself? I know you guys are watching from home, but I had everyone like raise their hand every time something came up. So give yourself a little miniature raise hand if you feel like these things. Have you ever felt disconnected from the joy and passion you once had from your work? Have you ever felt guilty for wanting to say no, but saying yes anyways? And have you ever felt like your worth only comes from being needed? I know as a practitioner, as a healer, as an herbalist, I have felt all of these things many times over. And especially feeling, I always like to say, I'm kind of like the Jewish mom. I'm not Jewish, Mexican mom. Like, there's so many different cultures that have this, but this feeling that whenever someone comes over, I have to drop everything, feed them, and make sure that every single tiny little care that they got is covered. And this is not just something that happens with me, but a lot of practitioners and healers I know, that we are so excited to take care of other people that we forget that we need to take care of ourselves too. So that's what this talk is today. This is what I like to call healer burnout. So if you've raised your hand to a few of those things, if you've ever felt these things before, I want you to just know you are not alone. Recognizing it early allows you to restore balance, reclaim your energy, and reconnect with your purpose as a healer. So when we did this talk live, I had everyone raise their hands, and at the end, everybody in the whole classroom was raising their hands because we've all experienced this. This is something that happens a lot in the holistic health industry that we don't talk about nearly enough. And I always like to say, like, recognizing it early might also just save your career or your life. And so some of my background, I was originally a massage therapist before I became a full-time herbalist. And I often saw people, like the average span of a massage therapist career is about 5 years. That's it. And that's because they burn out and they think, all right, that's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. And in the herbal field, I see this prolonged a little bit more, but I still see people not knowing how to balance their energy outtake versus intake, and eventually deciding that something along the way has to give. And so rather than having to change your whole life, career, passion plan, there are ways to bring it back. And we're going to talk about that today. And then another kind of harder touch point that I really want to bring home is there's actually a lot of amazing practitioners and a couple of really close people to me over the last 2 years that have taken their own lives because even though they were helping the community and showing up every day and giving and giving and giving, they didn't know how to ask for help themselves. And I think this is so important that we learn as healers and practitioners and herbalists that we have to have a two-way street with this energy giving, because eventually it might come back on us. And so I know that I have gone through cycles of absolute excitement and love to be here and to do this work, as well as periods of really dark depression from not being fulfilled too. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this yo-yo effect that happens with all of us and how to take care of ourselves more fully. So our intention for today is to reconnect with your true purpose and step fully into your calling as a healer. I know along the way for me, I lost touch a couple of times, and we're going to talk about how to stay more focused and stay more true to who you are. We're going to talk about how to learn the keys to overcoming burnout so you can restore your energy and have clarity of the work that you want to do. We're going to discover transformational tools that bring you back into balance and harmony. And we're going to end with the clear next steps to keep your healing path alive and thriving. So a deeper introduction. Hi, I'm Emily, that was me before I grew out my hair a few years ago. Um, I'm the director of Artemisia Academy of Herbal Arts and Healing. We're an online herb school based in Southern California. I live off grid in Santa Barbara. I live literally in these mountains in the picture behind me. And I love living, as a homesteading sort of lifestyle, but it is a lot more work. People don't realize this. It's a give and a take. I'm a sci-fi geek. If you nerd out on sci-fi shows and you've watched things like Firefly and Farscape and anything related to time travel, definitely find me afterwards and say hi. And then I'm a nature obsessed freak. I spend my weekends and my days off camping or hiking, being in nature. And my hubby even now carves out a few hours every morning whenever I go camping with him to key out plants because I just can't stop. I am a little obsessed. I've been teaching holistic health since 2014. I've been teaching everything from anatomy, herbal medicine, massage, nutrition, holistic lifestyle, and entrepreneurial coaching. And this is just a few of my fabulous students from over the years. We've had really amazing classes, both in person pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and now we're doing a lot of online courses, as well as still field trips and lots of fun. And so, yes, this is a true picture of me back when I first started my herbal journey, and I'm harvesting like gooseberries or something or currants on my friend's farm. I still look this nerdy on the weekends. This is what I look like when I'm not done up for a class. I first started out learning about herbs back in 2008. I was on a backpacking slash hitchhiking trip to the Rainbow Gathering. If anyone's ever heard of that, it's a huge gathering of thousands and thousands of hippies in a national forest someplace, and they all gathered to talk about peace and love and do free fun stuff. And on my way out there, or actually while I was there, and this is like miles and miles away from any access to a hospital or a town, I had food poisoning or giardia, and got so sick that I couldn't walk out of there. And luckily, at the Rainbow Gatherings, there's this amazing herbalist called Seven Song, who's based out of Ithaca, New York, and he brings his students out for a student clinic every year. And so that was my first introduction to herbs. And I thought, well, what they're giving me could be poisonous, could be dangerous, but my nearest hospital is 5+ hours away, and I can't even hike to get to the car. I guess I'll give it a try. And from then on, I was obsessed. Little did I know that a few cups of mint tea and some adaptogens for altitude sickness are what saved my life. And all of a sudden, I started seeing plants everywhere. I'd never really looked at them before. And I was like, oh my God, there's a plant and it does something. And there's another plant and it does something. I was just so excited that I just went down this, 2 and a whatever decade rabbit hole of herbal medicine and decided to go study. So I eventually found a school out in Boulder, Colorado. I studied with Paul Bergner out at the North American Institute of Medical Herbalism. It's still a mouthful. And got trained in clinical herbalism, nutrition, and then eventually I went on to become a massage therapist and a medical Qigong practitioner. And so eventually I opened up my own practice, began teaching, and I thought life was amazing for a second. And I thought I'd finally made it. And I was seeing clients, I was teaching, I had my own practice, I was developing my business. And finally, at the peak of what I'd say my massage career, seeing like 30 clients a week, I realized there was something deeply wrong because behind the scenes, I'd like show up and do this amazing massage or herbal, sort of client session, and then I'd come home and fall apart. And I'd be binging off of cookie dough and ice cream and watching TV till 2 o'clock in the morning and be really severely depressed, even though I thought I was living my dream. And so what was really going on is I was overwhelmed, I was exhausted, and I was actually working 3 or 4 jobs to survive as doing my dream career, overworking, under earning, and like constantly on that like hamster wheel of exhaustion, just going back and forth. And so I realized there's something wrong, but I didn't know what it was. So that's when about my back went out. And so I had a month of my life that I was strapped up. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. And I had to really look at the deep underlying causes of like how I got here. And I had had my back out several times before in my life. I worked on farms when I was younger, but this was the worst I'd ever had it. And I was like, I wasn't like heavy lifting. I wasn't doing anything super crazy. So how could I have ended up here again? And that's when I was forced to stop long enough to look at the real deep picture. And that's, I was constantly burning out. I realized that I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't do the life that I had built, that I had built in my head for years would be my dream life. And I realized that my old ways would no longer serve me. I had kind of seen this idea for a long time that a lot of massage therapists as well as other health practitioners would be like working a lot and helping care of others while breaking their bodies. And I realized this is some sort of weird martyrdom that happens, that we're so excited to heal other people that we forget to heal ourselves. And so that's where I realized that self-care had to come first in our healing profession. It's instead of an afterthought. And I vowed to become, instead of a wounded healer, where it's the Jungian version of, we get into the healing practice because we actually have some deep underlying wounds that we have not addressed or healed. I instead wanted to become a healed healer, someone that comes from, health and being that example, learning to, walk the walk instead of just talk the talk. And so from that moment on, my life changed, and I decided to teach from example instead of from this false front of I'm an herbalist, but I don't take care of myself at all. So skip ahead to 2017. That's when I was finally living my life again. And but this time it was from a really different viewpoint. It was from really putting my self-care first. And that's where the dream of my school was born. And so Artemisia, or Artemis, if you guys don't know the plants, Artemisia, like mugwort, wormwood, sagebrush, like those three plants are the symbol of everything I love. Artemis is this Greek goddess that was known for the goddess the hunt. And in reality, she was actually mother nature incarnated. She would like amorphosize into angry boars and bears and take care of women and children in need. And so definitely I really resonated with the archetype, and I realized that there's this deep underlying roar in me to protect Mother Nature, but also this deeper nature to also learn to protect myself. And a lot of that protecting myself is from myself, but it's also something that I see so many of us do is give instead of giving to us. So from that big life change, I met my adorable husband. This is my cute little dog, Lily. And, I had a whole life rearrangement. And so that's when I moved up to the mountains. Like a few months later, I met this amazing man. And literally we spend all of our vacations camping and backpacking, exploring fabulous nature places. And it has just been like this, the love of my life literally showed up when I started showing up for myself journey. So, now I live a life of passion, purpose, connection, and I like to just say, like, it's a dream to teach herbalism. The fact that I get paid to hang out with people that love plants is beyond anything I could have ever imagined doing. I have a supportive partner that appreciates me in every way. I live in a cabin on top of the mountains, and I have an incredible community of herbal friends and students. And I like to say all this and more is possible when you decide to put self-care first. So this is the foundation of what we teach all of our students in our programs, is that it's not just about herbs, it's also about reprioritizing healing in a way that's truly sustainable, self-sustainable. And from there, everything else flows. And so in our live class, I like to do this little hand raise exercise with you guys. And so I like to say, like, what happens when you feel like you're in your calling? Like, what happens for me is it feels like it's flowing, or like everything's moving really easily, really, really well. But when you're not in your calling, when you're not on your path, you feel like you're hitting your head against the wall over and over again. Like nothing's moving, like you're pushing a huge rock uphill, and you just kind of keep getting trampled over and over again. And so part of this is, it's not just about following herbalism or following healing. It's also about following your true path. And when you start figuring out what that is and you go after it and you give yourself the love and compassion and support that you need to really follow those dreams and that journey, everything else lines up into place. And it's really magical to see what that looks like. So, I'm toting off of the high horse here of like, it's so amazing, but I just want to say it ain't perfect, y'all. I'm still ongoing in this journey. I still burn out occasionally. The difference is that now I can recognize it, I can pivot, and I can realign. And so, like over COVID, I was teaching 35 hours a week on Zoom. I burned out again. I had to really realize like maybe the model that I built isn't the best for me. And this is something that happens a lot in the herbal journey. And I want to just say also the entrepreneurial journey is as we grow and develop, our goals and our priorities change. And so when I first started, my herbal massage, whatever career, I was like, yeah, this is totally what I want to do. I don't mind working 40 to 60 to 80 hours a week trying to run a business. And then once I got married, like a few months in, my husband was like, hey, hun, I love you, and I love that you do this, but can we ever see each other? And so I had this really great kind of reawakening of like, oh, my priorities are changing. Now I prioritize family. Now I prioritize a different type of security, a financial security even, in ways that I didn't do in my younger life. And knowing that, you're going to change as you grow up. I started off as like a punk, anarchist, rebellious, activist herbalist. And I thought money would never be an important thing to me. But as I've gotten older, as I'm shifting into starting a family in the next couple of years, a lot of things have shifted. And, learning that you can pivot, you can change directions when you want to if it's not working. I think it's a really important lesson that more of us need to talk about because we all have this pretty little dream of like, growing our own herbs and bottling them and then drying and bottling and making salves and going to a market and doing all these different things. But if you've ever actually done all of those things, you realize they all take an incredible amount of time and energy. And the reality is most of us can't do it all. And so, here our mission is changing. Instead of just helping others, it's about helping others to create sustainable, thriving practices and helping ourselves to do the same too. So again, I'm not perfect, but a living, breathing practice of daily work has helped me continue to do this work. And part of that daily work is looking at the hard truths and then doing some underlying work on me to keep the healing going for myself as well. So we'll talk about that in a bit. So let's first talk about recognizing burnout and what actually keeps you from living the life you love or from loving what you do. If you've been a practitioner for a little while or run a business for a little while, most of you know that at some time there crosses a line where the thing that you've been passionate about forever, that you've had as a hobby, then turned into a business, might at some point be something that you no longer love doing. And so like I remember when I first started like getting into the dream of having an herbal business, my first idea was to have an herbal CSA business, a community supported apothecary where people pay me a little bit each month for an herb kit throughout the season. And I thought it was a great idea. It was tons of fun. And then about 4 months in, I realized I hate making labels, which a seasonal kit that I develop new things every month means creating new labels every single month. And I hated labels and I hated product design at a certain point. And I realized I was like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And so, at a certain point when you do the same thing over and over and over again, even if it's something you love, you can burn out from it. And so this is just one of the many examples that I've heard, I've heard many people say similar things like that. It's like, I love teaching people salve making. I really do. But I'm going to be honest, after doing thousands of salves, hundreds of thousands of salves in my herbal career, I never want to touch another salve. I never want to make one. I like touching them, but it's like you eventually lose that spark, and that's what burnout is. Burnout doesn't always have to be like you worked yourself to exhaustion. It can also be a creativity burnout. So there's many different ways that this shows up, and we're gonna just talk about a few of them. So what are the signs, symptoms, and struggles of burnout? So some of the signs is emotional exhaustion after sessions or after doing your magical thing, whether it's making products or seeing clients, whatever. There's times that I would be energized by clients, but then there's also times that I would just be floored afterwards. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Difficulty focusing or being fully present, or detachment, going through the motions. As a massage therapist, I heard this a lot from people or retired massage therapists, let me just rephrase that. I heard a lot from people that they were massaging so much that they eventually stopped feeling. And as a massage therapist, that's really dangerous because the whole point is to be intuitive and to feel what's going on so you don't hurt somebody or go too deep. And if people weren't getting sessions themselves, which a lot of massage therapists weren't making enough money to pay for body work themselves. Like, we all traded a lot, but at a certain point, like, if you have to make more money, you stop trading as much because you're trying to work more. And people were hugely burning out and going numb because they were just giving so much of their energy all the time. I also remember, a few times doing herbal one-on-one sessions with people, and people would be telling me really hard, heavy things. And, when I'm fully embodied in myself, I can hold space for people. I can hold that empathy that's really important to hold when people are telling you terrible life stories. And at a certain point, I stopped feeling it. I just like, you just like have this detachment from being able to be there and care. And then there's that loss of excitement or passion where, what used to fulfill you and make you excited, you're just kind of over it. Or this is one of my favorites, irritability or impatience. When, especially if you're like doing the customer service side of a business, your ability to deal with the BS of people asking you a million questions that it's on the label or whatever, sometimes we just lose it. And especially if you feel like you're being short, you're being persnickety, you're just like not able to show up and be there in a kind, graceful, loving way, this is a really good sign of burnout. Symptoms, chronic fatigue, even after rest. Some of us know this as kidney qi deficiency or adrenal fatigue. I think a lot of us in the healing arts, like we give, and where's the coming back? Of course we're exhausted. The energy flow is off. Sleep disturbances. Sleep is one of the first distress symptoms of your nervous system being out of whack. And so if you start having insomnia regularly, you start having a hard time sleeping all the way through the night on a regular basis, that is definitely a symptom. For me, I have also had increased PTSD symptoms where my, really fabulous little triggers and flashbacks and like frozen in the moment or in my body or numb out whatever symptoms come up more and more. Especially if I'm, again, giving all the time, if I'm not putting that energy back in, I'm going to have a big flare out and I'm going to have to stop working at a certain point because there's too much going on here that I got to fix. Headaches, really fun. Muscle tension, digestive upset, an increased reliance on caffeine or stimulants. And now I've been a Java addict for many years of my life, but when you're drinking like 5 cups of a sugary frappuccino a day to get through seeing clients, that is a signal that there's something really wrong. And then I want to just say like the dependency on any type of recreational substance, whether it's smoking cigarettes or weed or sugar. This is one of the things I talk about a lot is I was a long-term sugar addict for years of my life, a food addict for years of my life. I'm still in recovery from it. I still have times where this flares up when I'm not looking hardly, enough at myself. And so this is one of those things that I see a lot of people covering up. And I know when I was first starting in, teaching, I a lot of time like really shamed myself for it, for that, in that whole imposter syndrome that actually all of us go through, but we think it's always just us, but I was like, I am not a great example of a healer, and I feel like a terrible person. I'm so ashamed of myself, hiding in my bedroom eating sugar basically. But the truth was, like, I was so stressed all the time. That was the only way I could cope. And so there, if you're having to work 3 to 4 jobs to pay for your business, to pay for your passion, there might be something off there. So, and I repeat this a couple of times because I know so many people in this practitioner that has told me the same story, that it really is something that we need to talk about more, is that, we all kind of live off of this really beautiful alternative fairy lifestyle dream, but in reality, we're all working so hard just to get by that of course you're going to burn out. It's a recipe for burnout in and of itself. And then for me, one of the major symptoms as well was a weakened immune system or chronic colds and flus. And so, when I was, again, back when I was doing massage, I'd be doing 20, 30 hours of massage a week and then be getting sick every month or every other month. And eventually I had a really good holistic boss, which was rare, who basically said, hey, and what's going on? Like, I think you're doing too much. And it took me a really long time to realize that there's, something about this work model that I was building for myself wasn't working. And so I've actually rebuilt the model for my business so that I have breaks throughout the entire year. I have 4 quarterly, quarterly break or retreat every single year so that I prevent myself from getting sick. I prevent that burnout and crash, and then take weeks off being sick instead of take weeks off enjoying a vacation. So very big difference. And then some of the struggles that we often face are taking on too much responsibility for our clients. Some years past, I had a couple of really hard clients where people came to me in the middle of a classroom, in the middle of a public teaching space, and while I was talking to some people inside, they came up like, hey, good old friend of mine, hey, I'm really sick. I have pneumonia. What herbs can you give me? And I was like, I don't have anything here. Sorry. Here are some essential oils you can use as steam, but if you have pneumonia, you need to go to the doctor. And lo and behold, they never went to the doctor, and they did unfortunately pass away. And for years, I beat myself up for it, that it was my responsibility, that I should have done something different. And the truth is, I told them what to do and they didn't do it. It's their responsibility to take care of themselves. It's my responsibility to take care of myself. And the amount of times I've heard similar practitioner stories of like something terrible happened to my client and I blame myself for it because they didn't do what I told them to do. It's a real thing. And we don't need to take on that much responsibility when it's their job to brush their teeth, to feed themselves, to go to the doctors, like all the regular things that humans should do. It's not our job to fix everyone. It's our job to fix ourselves. That's it. Difficulty saying no or taking time off. If anyone has had a hard time with this, raise your hand at home. I know for years, I thought it was okay to work 6 to 7 days a week as a holistic practitioner. And just saying it out loud now makes me laugh a lot because it's just insane. The reality is that like I have to only work like 4 days a week. That's the way my energy flow works. And it's like 4.5 days, I'll be honest. But still, like I've just never been able to do it full time. I don't have it. Another fun is, when you already have a book schedule, that client calls you up with this desperate question, this desperate ask, and you're like, I really don't want to. I'm already really busy. I'm already really overwhelmed and stressed, but okay. And I've done it a lot too, but the ability to start having healthy boundaries with their clients is a really important learning part that I think all of us, especially in the practitioner space or the business space, eventually have to develop. And so that's one of the skill sets I try and bring into my student base at the very beginning, because that is the hardest thing to do, is to learn to say no. But it's the most empowering thing to do, is to show other people how important your time and your energy and your needs are too. And then I also want to say, like, a lot of us are afraid to take time off because, oh, we'll lose business, we'll lose clients, like whatever. But the truth is, by showing other people how important self-care is, you're making an example for your clients, for your students, for your customers to see that it gives them permission to do it too. And I think that's so important. Guilt when prioritizing self-care. Has anyone ever felt it? I used to feel shameful for taking a day off to go get a massage myself. Is that ridiculous? I know. There's this weird people-pleasing thing that's built into a lot of us when, we want to take time out for ourselves. And especially people that are moms or caretakers, like there's this really huge guilt trip of like, sorry, honey, I got to take care of me is one of the hardest things to do and say. And so I like to practice it in really small ways by, 2 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time, and then eventually growing it until it becomes a bigger muscle to take care of yourself. And then feeling disconnected from spiritual or healing practices. Again, if you're feeling kind of numbed out or like wherever you used to feel like your spiritual cup overflows and it doesn't even there's no drop in the bucket now, that's a real thing that I think a lot of us feel. I know, I go camping a lot for my connection, my reconnection. I think herbalists, that's a lot of it, which is really fun. But there was definitely times that I'd go camping and just be like, all I want to do is drink a beer and sit here and do nothing. And I didn't even want to touch plants. Like that feeling, is kind of burnout. And then doubting your abilities or questioning your path. And so this is a real one. A lot of us, especially once we get into practitioners, business owners, product makers, you name it, we hit this wall of growth at a certain point. I think all of us go through it when we're learning how to run a business. And so often we think, oh, I am failing because I'm not making money. I am failing because my client didn't succeed. I am failing. Why am I here? I'm not even a good herbalist. I shouldn't even be an herbalist. I can't even call myself an herbalist. And that round of thinking is kind of absurd because in any other profession, if your boss wasn't paying you, you consider them a bad boss and quit. But as a self-employed person, you, for some reason, shame yourself for trying to be a boss and the employee basically at the same time and not succeeding because you're taking on too much. And yeah, it's just really funny how many times I connected my self-worth to my business or my self-worth to my clients or my self-worth to the labels on my products. I was a perfectionist, I think. But seriously, it's a real thing that we struggle with that we have to look at. So if this sounds familiar, I just want to say you're not alone. I had everyone raise their hand, be like, does anyone feel these things? And again, the entire class raised their hand. So especially in our industry, we see this a lot. And we think that burnout is something that, people that work really hard and do a corporate job or do physical labor jobs experience, but we experience it too. We experience it very differently, but it still affects us very deeply and affects our ability to thrive and survive in a whole different way. So every healer faces burnout. It doesn't mean that you're weak or that you're a failure. It's just part of the healer's path. And I just want to really emphasize this, this is part of the journey. We all go through this, and the realignment is what gets you back on board. So burnout is what I like to call a type of healing crisis. And so if you've never heard of the term a healing crisis before, a lot of herbalists talk about this and use this word, but a healing crisis is basically a period in time when you get sick, your body flares up, something happens, and it forces you to pause to then look deeper, do the deeper healing work, and then get better, and usually come to an even higher state of, healing, vibrancy, everything. So burnout is that healing crisis, and it forces us to grow and to realign with our paths. So let's talk about this healer's journey a bit. This is one of my favorite topics. Coming full circle to the reason we started on the healer's path. So I know for me, when I was younger, little 19-year-old self going off to herb school, I thought, oh my God, I found out about herbalism. It's a straight line. I go to herb school, which it took me like 2 years to figure out there's an herb school. I go to herb school. I'm going to go be a little practitioner or make a little herbal business or start an herbal homestead. I had a lot of ideas, you guys. And then, boom, like my whole amazing life is going to be right in front of me. And yeah, my journey's been more like this. And I feel like a lot of us, a lot of people's life's journeys are not typically a straight line. And especially in the field of herbalism, because, for us, it's not like, high school, college, career, family. Oh, even though that's the party line that we were toted so much when I was a kid. The truth is a lot of us find a career and then realize we have to do a different career and then a different career because life happens. And for me, every single point along the way has been like a hard, intense turning point, a tumultuous, I can't even say it right now. I'm not going to even try. My brain is burning out. A really rough road to get through. And sometimes life presents us with these really tough obstacles because that's where we're going to get the most growth, the most gain in our lives. So some of the hardest parts of my journey have been some of the best learning lessons that, it's built me to be who I am. And I like who I am now. I didn't think I would for some of it, but like really it develops you into a full rounded character. And so I know that all of us like to think, oh my gosh, we could zip line across and it'll be so easy. But the truth is most of us are going to do this crazy zigzaggy path, and that is part of the journey. And every part that detours you, that you feel off your path, is actually a different part of your path that you just didn't expect. And so for me, starting the school was part of those sideways part of my journeys. I never expected to be a school owner, but they kind of started presenting themselves and falling into my lap. And before I knew it, people were nudging me, be like, hey, when are you going to do more herb classes? Hey, when are you going to, this could be like a school. Like, I didn't know that this is the path that I had in front of me. And so by being open to the journey, sometimes being open for a very interesting ride, you get to some really magical places and really epic views. So hold on to your hats, guys. We're all going to get through it. So I like to call the healer's journey kind of a little 5-step merry-go-round. So the awakening, I learned about herbs. The training, I'm going to learn herbs. The launch, your business, your practice, working for other people. And then eventually we get to this beautiful little spiral out called burnout. And then if you decide to stay on this path, you have to face the big, deep stuff underneath to realign. Not all of us want to do it, but it's there for those who dare to. So our awakening. A lot of people come into the herbal journey by having their own healing crisis. And so they figure out that they're sick, they've tried the conventional route, and then eventually they discover herbs, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram now or out in the middle of a rainbow gathering. We all get through different ways. But herbs therapy or a practice of some type transforms you. And you have this aha that, oh my gosh, if it worked for me, it can work for others too. And I, for some reason, now have a passion and a calling that I am going to spend my life helping others with herbs or natural remedies. So this awakening is a really fun part of the journey. I love seeing people with that little light bulb clicking off of like, oh my God, this works. It's so cool. It's really so cool. My computer's getting funny. I'm covering it up. The training. So then you eventually start, going online, trying to figure out where all the herb books, the herbal magazines, the YouTube channels, the podcasts, and eventually maybe find a way to really develop your craft. And a lot of, this might be unconventional, like, there are people that have grandmas that learned herbs. God bless those people and those grandmas. And then for a lot of us, we go a more conventional route, books, trainings, courses, certifications, schools, and eventually gaining skills, gaining confidence, developing some sort of structure for how to put all this together. And again, there's that excitement that propels you forward, that excitement of stepping into your role as a healer and being of service. Now, the launch. I want to say, I remember when I was staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, coming up with brilliant business ideas, and I got insomniac from excitement a lot in this space, just because there's so many fun ideas to explore. So you're jumping into your craft, your practice full time, and some of us are working for other people, or working for a vitamin shop, or finding a farm to work on. Like some of us do this internship style thing for a while. Some of us just straight off the bat jump into building a business. It's really cool. It took me years to have that confidence. But eventually you decide that this is going to be like your full-time thing. This is what you're going to spend every waking hour, and maybe not so waking hour, devoted to. And so you're starting to curate your niche and establish your business. And often this is fueled by passion, but also a huge amount of overcommitment. And I know for myself, I thought I could juggle it all, working 2 to 3 jobs while building a business, or building a business where the profit model was I give away my sessions for almost free because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. So at this point, your boundaries are typically pretty blurry, if you have any. I didn't know that word till many years later. And everything revolves around you helping or being of service. And as much as this is beautiful and noble and more of the world needs this, this is where you start to get into trouble. Because eventually that overcommitment leads to burnout. So the next life-changing healing crisis is this realization that I can't go on like this anymore. You hit that wall, and you've either touched too many bodies or absorbed too much energy. You're overworking, under-earning, exhausted, and at some point maybe even resentful at yourself and others that you even got on this path. And I know that sounds maybe absurd for the youngins, the newbies here, but I remember realizing at a certain point, I have clients that went the corporate path, and they make so much more money, and they traveled all these beautiful places, and I am working here 6 to 7 days a week and barely scraping by. So did I choose the wrong path? I don't think so. But I definitely had to reprioritize my needs, because I realized that I was starting to resent a lot of my choices and a lot of the turnout of what happened. And, this wasn't just life choices, but this was also not protecting my time, my energy, my financial well-being. Like I said, when I first started, I did get into this to make money, but eventually I started realizing that my priorities and needs have changed. And learning to see that will help you pivot and figure out what you really need to do for you. And so that realignment. This is a chance to step back and rediscover your purpose. And here self-care becomes the foundation, not the afterthought. And so you see this in some of our elder herbalists, that they take pauses between things. They don't show up for everything. I got to see Rosemary Gladstar again at this last conference, and it was beautiful to see her. She's always melts my heart. And I also noticed a little bit more this time, she wasn't at every single event, because when she goes to book signing, there's 200 people lined up to hug her, take a picture with her, and sign a book. And there's no way she can give to all of that without doing a little retreat herself. And so I noticed her popping in and out and taking time to rest in between, taking time to go fill up her cup so she can come back and show up for all of us. So this is something that's really important for us to see, and to seek out mentors that do this, because there's also a lot of people in this industry that work 80 hours a week for most of their lives, and they end up a little bit alone, just because they've worked so hard their whole lives. And it's really important for us to recognize this, and to recognize that the path, the journey that you choose is up to you. This is a choose your own adventure life. You just have to order what you want. And so here, it's not only about helping others, it's about healing ourselves. leading by example and embodying balance instead of martyrdom. And so one of the martyrdoms that I realized, I've mentioned this financial piece a few times, is like I eventually realized that my financial needs changed so much over a very short period of time because all of a sudden this idea of kids started coming in the picture. And for anyone that's ever been a mom or is a single mom or caretaker, like you guys know, like, yeah, I'd love to be an herbalist, but I got to pay the bills. And this struggle is where I see a lot of herbalists, especially the female herbalists, eventually step off. Because the bottom line is, unless they can get a business that's up and thriving and going and hustling, a lot of them eventually have to have this reorientation of, at the end of the day, you just got to get paid. And there's not enough instant jobs in this field yet that it's easy for us to step into and make a lot of money. So this is where when students come into my school, I tell them straight up from the very beginning, in herbalism, you need two skill sets. One is the herbal skill set, and the other, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, is the entrepreneurial skill set. That is a whole nother learning curve. And if you're not going to be an entrepreneur, then go get a degree. Go find a skill set in an easy to step into job field, because there's going to be a time and place in your life when you want money to be easy. And unless you know how to bring money in successfully as an entrepreneur, or you know how to get a job successfully someplace else, herbalism might have to be the back seat or the side seat in your life, because at the end of the day, eventually a lot of us will have to make big life decisions. So I always tell people, you're going to need both. And for me, I've spent many years developing entrepreneurial skills, and that's where eventually I saw a lot of my students coming in and then instantly starting businesses, like right after herb school, that I realized instead of developing a clinical program, because there's actually still a number of great clinical programs across the country, I decided to develop an entrepreneurial program, because we need more herbalists to know financial skills and marketing and what a digital sales funnel is, and all these kind of advanced entrepreneurial concepts beyond just, I'm going to write a business plan. Because a plan is great, but if it doesn't work, you need to know how to handle it, what to do, and how to pivot again to stay in your business. So this is that full circle of realignment for me, building herbalists and entrepreneurs in a holistic way. So here we transition from Carl Jung's version of the wounded healer to the healed healer. So again, surviving is fun and all, like when I was in my 20s. But now that I'm getting older, I really like thriving. I like stability. I like not living paycheck to paycheck. I like having extra money at the bank so I can go travel and enjoy my life with a little more ease. Now, if this sounds absurd to you, then you can turn off the video. But otherwise, let's talk about how to change this around. So burnout is not the end. It's an invitation to a transformation, moving from depletion to balance, to healthy boundaries and embodied self-care. And so becoming a healed healer means walking your talk and not just speaking it. So I forgot to give you guys the warning. In our class, in a lot of my classes, I have people do a little journaling. So if you have a moment, if you have some piece of paper, you can pause the video if you want. I'm going to invite you guys to do a little deep self-reflections a couple times here. So the first one here, if you have a little notebook, pad of paper, you can pause this for a minute, however long you need. I like to ask you guys, why did you become a healer in the first place? Now, I know when I first started this path, I hated the word healer. I thought it was too flowery or something. I don't know. I was too much of a punk. Now I wear flowery things. Who knew? Who knew I'd like flowers? But I didn't like that word. I didn't want to resonate with that word. So why did you become an herbalist? Whatever word you want to use. For me, I wanted to run free clinics. I saw that example at the Rainbow Gathering, and then I heard about a few other ones, and I thought it was so amazing that there were people out there that were providing free healthcare for so many people that don't have any. And so my mission when I first started was I wanted to give it all away for free or for really low cost. And I'm still about giving things away, but now I like to give from overflow rather than deficiency. And so, meaning, I have full pay clients. I don't tell people I do sliding scale or free stuff all the time. I have enough clients to fill up my cup, my financial and energetic cup. And then the overflow is when I have extra time and energy. Then, whenever I see people that need it, I invite people to come in for free or for cheap. So I still offer a reduced rate for pretty much all of my students. I still see people outside of office hour for one-on-one sessions because I have enough that I can, rather than coming from overworking, doing 3 jobs, and then trying to give it all for free. So take a minute, figure out what was your reason. And then what was your original vision, passion, or calling? For me, it wasn't teaching. My original passion was making medicine. And eventually I realized, or actually farming, I should say, that was actually my first one. It was farming and growing things. And I've learned over the years, I'm actually not the best farmer or herb grower. You could laugh, but my husband has given me plastic flowers many times because he knows how many things I kill. I'm great at working on farms, not so great at farming myself, but that's still a skill I'm learning. I, over the years, got to really see, after working on many farms, how hard farmers work, and I realized I didn't want to do that path. So that was my original vision. And then, how has burnout challenged that, and how might you reconnect with it now? So I've given you some of my turnaround stories here. So take a few minutes, figure out some of this for you, and then we'll move on. Okay. So again, pause if you need to, come back when you're ready. Becoming a healed healer. So how to get and keep the life you love. So I consider this healed healer path kind of 2 parts. One is the recovery. If you're burnt out currently or still recovering from burnout, you need to spend a lot of deep time here. All right. And just take a second, look at this. There's this lady sitting in a beautiful place with a cup of tea in the mountains in a retreat. So for me, recovery is a lot about a retreat. And then prevention, the daily work to keep it all going. So recovery for me is rest, reflect, and reconnect. If you can't feel things anymore, it's time for you to slow down enough so you can feel things. All right. If you haven't rested, it's time to stop and rest. And this is really hard, especially if you've been an entrepreneur for a while. I know for me, over COVID, there's a lot of people that I had to stay home. I couldn't go to work. I was so bored. I was an entrepreneur. I worked harder than I ever worked in my life. I had to do 2 massive pivots in my business to keep it going. And so I didn't stop. I never got that break. I never got that time off. And towards year 3, 4, I don't know if you still call COVID part of last year or not, but still at a certain point I started resenting people for it. And I realized it's because I didn't do what I needed to do, and that was rest. And so I had to take a break. And so I actually took about a year where I worked part-time for someone else's business. So I didn't have to worry about pushing so hard in mine. And it was one of the best things I could have ever done because I needed to stop pushing all the time. So, and then part of that resting and reflecting, journaling, I'm really into, we'll talk about it, but also spending some time to reconnect with who you are, what you want, what your needs are now in this new stage of your life, because we're always learning and growing, and figuring out how you can really resonate with where you want to be. So I like to consider this recovery work kind of an analog for the big repair work of doing the deep systems overhaul of your car. And so, for example, I had some nice chewing on wires in my car this year, super fun. And at a certain point, they basically had to pull the entire thing apart to figure out which little wire where was causing the problem. So 2 months without a car, 2 months of borrowing lots of people's cars, and walking a lot more and biking a little bit, got to do that fun time. You really have to stop to look at things deeply inside us. So that's what we're going to do instead of on us, is a stop. And so, this rest phase is really important. So take a true break from your clients, from your business, from the output, from production. And I know a lot of us are like, oh, I can't because I got to pay the bills. Maybe ask for help. I know this is like absurd, but maybe ask help from your parents, from your hubby, your friends, your family, whatever. Or maybe put a call out to your clients and to your customer base and say, hey, I need to take a pause for a second. I'm going to start a GoFundMe for just a second, so I can take a month off, like whatever it is that you got to do. Or like me, like I took a side break from my business, like whatever you have to do, because you got to stop. You will not recover from burnout without pausing. And this is so important to emphasize. It's like, just like how people have like sports injuries and then they go back out and do more exercise and then they injure themselves again and again and again until to the point where they've lost their career. This is what will happen to you. You will lose your career. And the truth is, from my business, whenever I've come from a place of burnout, it don't go. The money don't flow. People pick up on that energy and they're not attracted to it. But whenever I've come from a place of like fulfillment and joy and, fully nourished, people want to be around you. It happens. People resonate. Reflection. So what's working, what's not? Having the deep, hard conversation with yourself. And for me, it's literally, and I do this actually every month now, I get out a piece of paper, put a line down the middle, what's working, what's not, spell it out. And you got to just see like, what do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? What do you have to get rid of? One of the hardest things that I've had to do in the last couple of years is realize that herb walks, as much as I love them, they burned me out. They sucked my soul because it was the only time I had off with my hubby and he really didn't like it. And it was me doing community service that was wearing on my energy. And when I looked at the hard bottom line of what was working for my business, what was not, it wasn't working. And so I eventually had to make this really hard call of like, I love herb walks, but I'm just going to put them down for a little while. So I took a year off of doing herb walks for the first time in 7 years. I've been doing it every month for 7 years. And so I took a year off. And the truth is, I don't know if I'm going to come back to them or not. I think seasonally, every now and then, camping trips, but full time, no, I don't need to. It's hard, but you might make good decisions from it. And then you got to ask, what is your soul asking for? And so I got to spend some time thinking about like, I needed some nourishment. This year, I went traveling a lot. And it was all like gifted from the universe, from friends, from family. Like I didn't see any of it coming, but I needed to get inspired again. And the time off from my business allowed me to do it. Reconnect. So with yourself, with nature, with your original calling. I think it's so important to find yourself. And so it doesn't matter what your spiritual practice is, your religion, whatever it is, do it, But for me, like my happy spiritual place is nature. And spending time outdoors, spending time in the forest, spending time in different ecosystems where I get to meet new plants, like when I got to go out to Ohio, this is how I reconnect. This is how I get joy. And so you got to find time. And so I rebuilt my business a few years back with these quarterly retreats. I actually take 4 to 6 weeks off every year, one per season. And part of that is always having a nature retreat where me and my hubby or me and one of my besties go camping and we spend time in the mountains out here, and I literally just get to have time in nature, get to have time with my plant folks. That's what it's all about. So from there, you get to do what I like to call the deep work. And this one slide could actually be an entire slideshow, but I'm not going to do that. But basically, this is where you have to figure out where you got to fix you, because it ain't just your business, your practice, this profession. It is you that you got to look at. So, where are you lacking healthy boundaries? With your time, with your energy, with your money. I eventually realized I had a hard time saying no. I had a hard time asking for what I was worth. And so I learned from another business mentor outside of the herbal world that wherever you have a hard time speaking up for yourself and having those boundaries, that's what office policies are all about. Spelling it out in writing, having the internet or chat GPT, I know I use AI, you guys, help come up with a nice, healthy office policy or a return policy or refund policy, whatever it is that you have a hard time dealing with your clients and customers, you can develop a healthy boundary through verbiage, and it doesn't have to be yours. So that was one of the really great things that helped me start establishing that. And then I could just come back and point to something instead of like, oh, this didn't really feel right. Like, how do I negotiate this? Like, you don't need that. Then lean into, and I wanted to say the healthy boundaries, like that takes a lot of time and a lot of screw ups to figure out. So if you're not there yet and it's taking a long time, it's okay. There are answers out there. You could just ask more people, ask more mentors, develop more friends in the herbal world. That's what herb conferences are all about, you guys. That's how you get a lot of good ideas of how to get there. Leaning into supportive relationships. So I know when I first started, people thought I was crazy that I wanted to be an herbalist. Like, my dad kept looking at me like, how are you going to make money? How are you going to make money? You know, and like at the time I was 19. I didn't care about money at the time, you know, but now I understand why he said that. I get it now. But you know, now like now around the other side, like I am now very supported by my parents. When I started my own business, you know, my parents I used to think were the most boring people in the world. They had desk jobs their whole lives. My mom was an accountant. She did my bookkeeping. My dad was a software engineer. He fixed my computers. He helped me build a website. You know, like I turned out that they became the most incredible support group for me running a business. But you got to kind of draw the lines in place. There are people in your lives that suck energy out of you, and there's people that build you up. And if people are sucking energy out of you, you eventually got to limit your time with them, or maybe even like cut the cord, get them out of your life. You know, like that was one of the hard lessons for me growing up, growing into this industry, growing into my adult self, was that I realized that my younger friends all had like drug, alcohol, and other serious problems. And, you know, at the time we were fun. It was fun and we were young. I didn't know. And as I got older, I realized like these people have toxic behaviors that aren't serving me anymore. And eventually I had to, you know, step away from major friend groups because I needed to be around healthier people. And that's hard. It's really hard. But sometimes building up supportive people in your life is the most important way that you're going to succeed in that. And then learning to invest in self-care. And this is, you know, for some of us might be hard, but I just want to like raise a hand again, like, you're an herbalist, right? Or you're studying herbalism. Have you ever been to an herbalist? And I can't tell you how many people in this field like don't go to see herbalists themselves. And when I was in the massage field, when I was teaching massage therapy, this was like one of the things I drilled into my students there is like, if you're getting massages, you got to receive massages. You can't learn what feels good unless you feel it yourself. And just like with herbs, like, how do you know if it works if you don't try it yourself? So yes, try every herb, but also to be a good practitioner, you got to see how other people do it. Learn the do's, the don'ts, the faux pas, all of it. And if you're not investing in yourself the way that you invest in your clients, of course you're going to burn out. It's just, yeah, you know, so, you know, treat your own health and sustainability as non-negotiable. So that includes your health, not just seeing alternative practitioners, but also going to doctors, getting physicals, getting lab work done. Like, I can't tell you how many people in the herbal field are like, oh yeah, I didn't go to the doctor for like 10 years because I didn't trust them. It's like, okay, great. And then they're like, but it turns out I had like this tumor for several years that I was ignoring. It was like, you know, like these are real health things people go through that we see with our clients sometimes, but we do the same thing, and that's not okay. Or for me, like I avoided going to a dentist for like 10 years, and the financial reasons was a huge part of it, but also fear. I had some mouth trauma from a dentist before. And when I finally started hearing other people talk about like how amazing it was that they went to the dentist, how amazing that they don't have cavities, how amazing that like they're taking care of this one part of their body that they've been neglecting for years, I had this aha moment of like, oh, I've been neglecting part of me for years too. I should look into that. And the more that I start taking care of all these parts of me, the more I start really doing deeper healing. And if you get a diagnosis from a doctor, that means you'll know how to treat it or have better ideas of how to treat it as an herbalist. So, financial future. I had everyone in class raise hands of like, who here has a retirement account as an herbalist? And the only people that raised their hands were people that had had corporate jobs for part or all of their lives. So I just want to say this is like a huge issue in our industry. Is a lot of people are not like will not look at finances, do not learn about finances, and therefore avoid it until they're 50, 60, 70. And then instead of having retirement and a savings, they end up having to work their entire elder years because they don't have any other options. And I don't think this is okay. This is not sustainable for us. So this is one of the reasons why I started learning business skills, and this is one of the reasons I teach this in our entrepreneurial program, like financial like savviness, like the basics is something that should be required, I think, in high school, but none of us get there. We need to be looking at the big picture of our financial well-being as well. And then learning and development. So I know I went to school for herbalism, but it took me years before I started taking continuing education in herbalism. And that's, financial issues were part of it, but also like I just didn't think I was worth it. I don't know why. And so that's why I like to go to conferences now. It's a great way to connect with people, but it's also, you got to get inspired. You got to keep learning. You got to keep taking classes and keep developing yourself more, because most herbalists, most of us in this holistic health field are lifetime learners. And the only way that we get better is by learning and practicing more. And then the last one on this list is making time for play. And so I think this is the most important part of deep work is fun, joy, creativity. These are parts of healing. And if you're not enjoying your life for a certain part of your time, you better doubly enjoy it later, because this is your life. You only get one. So if you neglect the things that make you happy, you will be very unhappy with your life. And so especially if you're an entrepreneur working way too hard, you'll probably resonate with this. Like, it was years before I started taking myself on trips. Even if I can't afford it, you guys, camping is almost free. Like, okay, maybe some people spend a lot of money on camping, and I don't know why. But, find a friend with a truck, sleep in the back of their truck with a few blankets. Like, you can make a very simple camping trip with almost nothing. And so for me, it was just getting the time to get out, to enjoy my life. There's a really great book called The Artist's Way, and this is where I got my love of journaling from. We'll talk about more in a minute. But also part of the exercises in that book is to go take yourself on weekly dates. And I thought this was so cool, and I've continued it on for years. It's like, to spend an hour each week doing something fun for yourself, whether it's window shopping or, going and getting a latte and sitting someplace or whatever it is. Like, find some time to get into your creative, happy space and build your hobbies. And as an herbalist, like, herbs used to be my hobby. Now it's my career. It's really important for you to find other hobbies that make you happy too. Yeah. Okay. So some reflection work for you guys. Again, you can pause the video if you want to do this work here. This is also in the notes that we have for the IHS, convention notes. What originally lit me up about this work? What gave you joy about it? Where am I giving from depletion instead of overflow? Which part of my life or practice needs more balance? I ask myself this one a lot because it's a continual work in progress for me. And if I could change one thing to feel more aligned, what would it be? So give yourself a few minutes, take a pause here, and see how you can lean into this deep work just a little more. Okay. So just because this is an herbal conference, I had to put in herbs. So if you're dealing with burnout, these are my top 5. So milky oats, great deep nervous system restorative. Milky oats is super high in B vitamins, so it's great for restoring the nervous system in a lot of different ways. Great for chronic stress and exhaustion. Tulsi or holy basil, it's a great nervine and adaptogen. It does it both. So it's great for anxiety, it lifts spirits, great for emotional clarity and resilience, and it balances stress hormones and soothes the heart. I definitely love this one. Skull cap quiets a racing mind, especially for those restless nights of inspiration or woes. This is one of my go-tos. It calms an overactive nerves. It helps insomnia or anxious spiraling. And then it's also really high in magnesium, which is also amazing for energy and for nervous system repair. And then rose, because we all need more heart herbs. Rose heals heartbreak, grief, emotional wounds. And I also want to say, like, especially when you're dealing with the whole kind of trauma thing, or maybe you've got trauma from your own business thing. It happens, you guys. It offers softness and protection to the tender heart. And then lastly, ashwagandha strengthens a depleted nervous system. It's really great for reducing anxiety, restoring resilience for PTSD, especially with fatigue or burnout. So these are my top 5. Find a way to sneak them in, put them in your formulas. They definitely help a lot. Okay, last little bit, prevention. Let's talk about the daily practice. So we talked about recovery being the deep overhaul work. Well, prevention is the regular maintenance. And so I'm a woman. I don't know much about cars. I never did the car thing growing up. I've got a very sweet dad that took care of me for years, and then I luckily met my amazing hubby who's great with machines and great with taking care of my car. But they have both taught me very important things, and that is if you don't do the regular things like tire pressure checks and oil changes, eventually it's going to break down. And I have done this to myself before, so I know this very well. My cars do break down when I don't take care of them. So now I've got sweet people that help remind me to take care of cars more. And I've gotten smart, you guys. You'll love this. I use ChatGPT to develop a car maintenance schedule for me. I told it the make and model of my car, how old it was, the major repair work I've done, and then I asked it to develop a budget and a time maintenance schedule, and then even a Google Calendar that I literally just imported into my Google Calendar that I set up with regular reminders, so now I know when to do the maintenance on my car. So this is so important because I feel like so many of us are like, yeah, I know all these healing concepts, I take herbs all the time, but there's so many times that I would like be taking herbs all the time, but not actually sit down and write a formula for myself. And it wasn't until I wrote a formula for a client that I was like, oh my God, I need all those things. I guess I need to make this for me too. Like spending time to actually do your work is really important. And this is how we can prevent ourselves from having a burnout that breaks us down, that makes us pause for months or years at a time. So prevention is not a one-time fix, it's a daily practice. It's a commitment to habits and boundaries as sacred appointments. So meaning, you know, and I want to just say, like, a lot of us have done this, like, who's been like, I'm going to start doing yoga, or I'm going to do this New Year's whatever challenge, or this self-care thing, and you like come with this long list of 20 things that you're going to do every day to like take care of yourself, and then after about day 3, it's gone. So this commitment isn't like a huge list. This commitment has to be doable, and it also has to be something that you do all the time, all the time. And this has been years work for me because I know that when I first started hearing about self-care, I've made hundreds of lists in every journal of all the things I was going to do. And the truth is, I was really bad at sticking to it. I'm really bad at sticking to routines. And eventually I had to reframe that as I love doing rituals. And so I developed a ritual of daily self-care that it gets to be different every day as long as I show up for myself every day. So this prevention here is walking the walk and embodying that self-care daily. And this allows you to serve more deeply without sacrificing yourself, meaning that we are healed healers rather than martyrs for healing. All right, so let's learn how to have self-care rituals to take care of ourselves better. And I just really want to emphasize like why this matters. Tending to your own healing expands your capacity for others. So especially for me, as I started practicing more and seeing more clients, I started having bigger and bigger, heavier and heavier cases for a while. And eventually, like, it was to a point where it's like real big things are happening with these people, and I don't know how to feel about it. I don't have the capacity to hold space for it all. And that's when I got a really good knock on the shoulder or tap on the shoulder from a friend being like, hey, like, this is what counseling's for. Counseling is a huge part of my self-care because if I want to hold space for others deeply, I got to hold space for me first. And so sometimes it's working through my own stuff, and sometimes it's actually helping me process like holding space for others too. So especially if you've got complicated clients, I want to say this is definitely a great way to expand your capacity for others. And the prevention is a lifelong self-care practice. Don't aim to do it perfectly, just aim to do it. And when I started rephrasing like the 20 checklist to it doesn't matter what I do as long as I do it, it really started shifting things a lot for me because I saw people that were amazing in their lives and like showing up and vibrant and just looked like they always had their stuff going. And I didn't realize that the reason they could do that was because they just had this self-care practice nailed down. And they meditated every day, or they did a walk every day, or they they everyone's got their own thing. But because they really stuck with it, they were able to have this vibrancy in a way that I had never seen ever growing up. And this is what the walking the path of the healer is about. It's doing the daily work to keep growing. So I know a lot of us don't like to do work, but I like to say that clocking in for myself is awesome. And when I first started this practice, I had heard about this thing called the hour of power. Massage teacher of mine had told me about this, and this was if you had an hour every day to set yourself up for the whole rest of your day, what would that look like? You could fill it up with whatever you want, 3 different chunks, 15 minutes, 20 minutes each, and so it started for me with like reading and walking and journaling. And I mean, I've done so many different things over the years, but really we're stretching, doing yoga, like doing, I don't know, like introspective stuff, doing some tarot cards, like whatever it is, calling a friend, that can count. For me, that little structure was a huge empowering thing. And so it started with like, and she was like, if you can't do an hour, do 15 minutes, 5 minutes of each. And I was like, wow, that's really empowering. I could just do 15 minutes. And then she's like, if you can't do an hour, do 10 minutes. And so I started doing this routine of like, I'm going to do at least 2 minutes of each thing. So 6 to 10 minutes basically total of stuff. And I'm just going to start there, starting with 10 minutes of carving out for my life. And eventually that grew to 30 minutes, eventually to an hour. And nowadays I clock in about 3 hours a day. I'm going to be honest, like as a part-time job, I do close to 20 hours a week of self-care. And that's because I had a lot of burnout to recover from. So maybe at some point it won't be so intensive, but if I don't do it, I just don't care as much. I don't feel as much. I might give a yacht level is just not, it's not there, and so the more that I clock in for myself, the more work that I do for myself, the more that I love everything else that I do. And so this has been one of those things that I've tried not doing. I've tried doing a little bit back and forth. The point isn't to do it perfectly. The point is to experiment, to see what feels good for you. And then once you figure out what feels good, like take note. And for me, I did enough wrongly that I was able to start seeing that when I do it, when I actually just do it, doesn't matter what it is, I just do it, I feel better. And so I just started repeating the process more and more. And little did I know that my whole life started changing. So really big shifts. So the hour power is a really cool concept. I don't know where that originally came from. I didn't coin it, but I did see a shift for myself when someone else in my life gave me this really big kind of map of like, just touch on 3 things, and your 3 things might be different than my 3 things. That's totally fine. But for me, it's something physical, something psychological, and something spiritual. So a physical is anything that restores your body's energy. So it could be exercise, body work. I get massages once a month, somatic practices, breath work, yoga, dance, martial arts, hiking, whatever it is, fill in the blank, something physical. On days that I don't have much energy, I found this great lady online called the Workout Witch, and she does 10-minute somatic body practices. And I want to say it's amazing, and it's stupidly simple. And half of them are like lay on the bed, wiggle your toes back and forth, wiggle your knees back and forth, do some rocking, and it's like, I wouldn't call it exercise, but man, does it make me feel good. And when I gave myself full permission to not be perfect at the workout every day, but instead doing some body work every day, it shifted everything, because then I could keep it up. Because so often we're like, oh, I don't feel like doing it, I guess that's it. But instead it's, I can't do a run today, I'll do a walk. I can't do a walk today, I'm going to lay on my bed and wiggle my toes. And I gave myself 10 to 20 minutes to check in with my body. It's great. Psychological, ongoing inner reflection. So journaling, inspirational books. I love reading books or listening to podcasts, going to classes, therapy, coaching, support groups, you name it. Find your thing. And so for me, I've relied heavily on therapy and counseling, on support groups. I eventually found support groups for overeating, compulsive eating behaviors, and changed my life. This is actually where I got a lot of that structure of the people that I saw in those groups doing amazing. They did daily work. No duh. Yeah, it was really amazing to see where some people model their life off of. And so it, again, doesn't matter what your viewpoint, practice, background is. It's just about finding some way to do the mental reset every day. And then spiritual, connecting to a deeper well of restoration. So meditation, prayer, retreat, spiritual practice, go to church, whatever you do, time in nature, find your thing. And so some of the practices that I do are kind of like all in one, like meditation is definitely a spiritual, psychological, and physical experience for me. I feel like it hits all the buckets, not all the time, but sometimes. Journaling, I stick with heavily because, sometimes it's like a daily work thing, and sometimes it's a deep spiritual awakening, of like, oh, this is my whole life, and this is why I feel this way, I found this great book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way. I'll mention it for a second time. And the practice in this book that they teach you is 3 pages of journaling per day. Stream of consciousness, doesn't matter what it looks like, no one will ever read it, maybe you. But that practice of just getting stuff down, getting the gunk out of your head onto a piece of paper, you can burn it later if you want, is really powerful. And then that book goes through different layers of stuff that's, kind of 12-steppy in a way, goes through some childhood trauma stuff, goes through some past life stuff, it's really good. I think it's great to find books and resources and podcasts or whatever that helps you work through the layers in a really loving, supportive, and they've been there kind of way. So again, figure out your 3 pillars, whatever they are, and figure out different things that you might want to do around them. And so for mapping out your practices, if you want to follow these 3 columns, do it. If not, figure out, again, your 3 buckets and list the current practices that you do. And then if you want to come up with things that you want to try, you can throw those in there too. But then, pick your daily 3 to lean into. And so I like to say, instead of you have to do these 3, I like to say, choose from the bucket. Like for me, I rotate walking with my dog in the morning, doing some yoga, or wiggling my toes on my bed, and then a couple times a week going on a big hike with my hubby. So that's my basic physical practice. But do I do other stuff sometimes? Absolutely. And I'm not going to double or triple workout in a day typically, unless it's a really special occasion, But so figure out pick 3 things each day and just try it out. And you're going to try out a few different things before you figure out what your magic special sauce is. So prioritize yourself first. I like to do this work first thing in the morning because otherwise I get distracted, I forget, I get busy, I'm taking care of everyone else, I get too tired. So again, you expand your capacity to give without burning out the more that you fill up your cup first. And so I like to fill up my cup first in the morning. That way I can give to people without being pissed off, honestly. That's what it is. Okay. So if you haven't mapped it out, spend a few minutes. This is, I've got a full worksheet for you guys in the convention notes. Figure out what your 3 things are. Figure out what your columns of stuff are. And Try it out, experiment, see what happens. It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to do it every day to start, but over time, what feels good will be something you want to lean into more and more. All right, so ending, burnout is not, burnout is not failure. It's a signal. It is your body's way of saying that you are depleted and you got to rest up, honey, because no one else is going to do it for you. So your recovery needs to come first, not last. So rest, reflect, reconnect. Prevention is your keystone habit. So do the deep work and practice daily self-care. And this deep work thing is going to be ongoing. It's not going to be like an overnight fix, but the daily self-care is what's going to keep you going as you're developing deeper practices and habits and self-care and boundaries. Fill up your own cup first. Take care of your mental, physical, spiritual well-being. Really important. And I always like to kind of say, you're not alone. So especially when you're having rough times in life, just remember you've got a huge community. And so if you weren't able to go to the convention in person, just know there is a lot of us amazing herbalists here supporting each other. You know, a lot of people that were raising their hands in class being like, yeah, I feel this too. Like, find us. We're online. We're on Instagram. A lot of us have, are a part of this bigger community. Like, you can reach out for support. So lean on your community, get support, and just take small, consistent steps to create long-term transformation. Like these big things that I've done in my life, they did not happen overnight. These big transformations took sometimes years, but they did happen. You're not alone. You're not stuck forever. I have felt that, you guys. You will get through this. And so we're here to help you every step of the way. And then becoming a healed healer is a daily practice, not a destination. Your well-being is a foundation for healing others. So if you want to be an herbalist, you want to do this, past the rest of your life, you have to change your foundation to be you. It's a big one. You're important. You're worth it. And this is just a cute little cartoon that we like to put all over. You cannot pour from an empty cup. This is a Chinese proverb that I like to live by because, that teapot, when it gets empty, you're out of tea, but when we are filling up our own cup, we really can do a lot to change the world and ourselves. So heal yourself first, you guys. That's what we're all about. This is the practice that we teach at Artemisia Academy. This is the foundation of all of our programs. And I always like to say to all of my students, like, I am a mentor for life. So any of my students are students for life. I have gotten the very great pleasure of seeing my students, finish school, go off, start their own journey, start their own businesses. And my favorite thing is to have them reach back out and be like, hey, I've got this problem. This is what's going on. This is going on my business, my herbs, my whatever. And I love seeing them years later, and I like to see them as they grow up and as they change and their lives totally flip around. Like, I want to be here for you guys because that is what I was missing for years in my practice and in my world. And so I believe in having mentors, and I want to be people's mentors for life. The only way I can do that, though, is if I do the same work too. So be the example, you guys. Keep passing it forward, and we're going to have some fun long term. So if you guys want to work with me down the road, we have several amazing programs at the Artemisia Academy. So our Herbal Apprentice program is our beginner, hands-on, self-paced mentorship program where you can start your journey as an herbalist, get that foundational knowledge to be a home herbalist and help your family and friends. Our Community Herbalist program is our intermediate program, 350 hours of self-paced mentorship, and it's all, again, hands-on. We love to be tactile, to learn by doing and sharing and experiencing things. And then, this is where we really develop our clinical skills, our herbal safety, our features to really develop this beyond just ourselves, to really make a bigger impact in our community. And then last but not least is our holistic entrepreneurial program. So if you guys want to go beyond the world of herbalism, or if you're in a different path, like a yoga teacher, a massage therapist, whatever, I made this kind of umbrella holistic entrepreneurial program. So it's for herbalists and everyone in the holistic world to launch and grow their business, covering everything from finances, business planning, marketing, and digital sales funnels and back-end business admin stuff. All the stuff that doesn't look sexy that we all need to learn how to do to run a successful business. So you guys can take a look at our programs online. And then I do still do consultations, you guys. I've done it for 2 years. I'm finally back in the game. I'm very excited. It's personalized guidance for self-care, recovery, using nutrition and herbs. I specialize in helping people with burnout recovery. It is my favorite thing to talk about. And then for people that are just getting started, we also have tons of online workshops and classes from medicine making and body practices and lots of fun herbal wisdom. So check us out. And if you want to get on our email list and get a deeper kind of what you should do next for your self-care, we have a really cool self-care quiz for healers. And so this is where you learn how to focus on yourself and it really focus on different sections like your purpose, your fulfillment, your mental health, your boundaries, your relationships, and kind of covers like this is where you're missing and this is where you should focus this next year. So really fun. Give it a little scan. You can jump on board. And then last but not least, if you decide to jump into our programs, we're going to give you guys $500 off for being here. So thank you for listening to my chat today. Thank you for supporting your school and for the thank you to the International Herbal Symposium, to the United Plant Savers. Make sure you guys that you come back next year because this has been one of the best conferences I've ever been to, and I've met the most amazing people. So if you guys want to start your herbal journey with us or your entrepreneurial journey, whichever, you can use our coupon code IHS2025, or you can reach out to us online. We're happy to chat with you too. So just a little contact information for you guys. If you want to reach out, we are on Instagram, we're on YouTube, and you can always reach out to us directly on email or through our website. So thank you guys so much for coming and hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks, guys.